Good evening and welcome to another edition of Nevada County Interviews. I'm your host, Paul Minicucci. And tonight we are going to be talking with two football stars from Nevada County who have come into the studio to talk about a very serious issue, traumatic brain injury among football players, and what can we do about that. So this is part 3 of a 8-part series on traumatic brain injuries that we are running. So I want to welcome George Visker and Kevin Brown to the studio.
All right. Thank you.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for coming down and for sharing your stories.
Absolutely.
So George, let's start with you. I would like to know a little bit more about you. You're a Californian, right?
I am born and raised in Stockton. Went to Stag High, and then I left. To
Right.
Colorado.
So tell me, why did you choose Colorado?
Growing up in Stockton, and I lived in what was known as the hottest house in the world. I wanted to play somewhere that was cold. And I'm an avid outdoorsman, so I was a decent ball player and good grades, and I had a lot of scholarship offers, and I wanted to go somewhere I could not only play ball and get a good education, I wanted to be able to do a little hunting and fishing. So that was my main.
Right. Great. And then we'll talk a little bit more about how you got involved at pro football level. Kevin, tell us about where you come from.
I'm from Independence, Missouri, and after I graduated from high school, actually I came out west to California and went to junior college in San Diego, and then got a scholarship to the University of Idaho.
Why did you choose the Vandals?
Well, they had a passing offense. They started 5 wide receivers and had a dome stadium and an All-American quarterback, so pretty easy choice for a wide receiver.
Right. And you also returned kicks in college, did you?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, George, you went on to play for you were drafted by the Jets in 1980, round 6, is that right?
Correct.
And then you ended up with the 49ers?
Yeah, with the Jets, I got cut at the end of preseason, and then I actually did a quick little stint. I didn't realize, but the Canadian League has a draft along with the NFL. So the day I get home from New York, Calgary had called, and I guess they had drafted me, and they wanted me. Their season starts early, so they were already into their season. So they wanted me up for a 2-week trial. I knew I could break in the NFL. I needed to find the right place that needed me, and so I talked to my agent. He said, "Go back there and stay in shape for a couple of weeks, and someone will probably pick you up." So I went up to Canada for a couple of weeks and practiced.
One of the 2 Rough Riders in the Canadian Football League.
You know, and actually when I was up there, their quarterback, Anderson, was an old ex-Colorado player too.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. So then you ended up with the 49ers in 1980.
Yeah, they picked me up right before the first Dallas game.
And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. So Kevin, when you came out of Idaho, you didn't get drafted.
I did not. Actually, I had an extra year of eligibility, which I spent 1 season at Humboldt State as well, and to try to get more film and more opportunities to get in the NFL spotlight as far as scouting and whatnot. And as a free agent, I had a former player who actually played with the 49ers, Dan Audick, acted as my agent, got me an opportunity down in Arizona, and was doing pretty well during the camp, got injured, and then spent a year over in Europe.
Yeah, who did you play for in Europe and Germany?
It was the Rams.
Yeah.
It was the Rams affiliate in actually Nuremberg.
Nuremberg.
Yeah.
Right. And so both of you actually had your careers cut short because of injuries. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
So here we are in 1980, and you're playing in Dallas, and I think you mentioned to me Doug Cosby earholed you on a play, and
I don't know if it was Cosby or not. He came in after me. It was Jay Saldi, if I remember correctly.
Jay Saldi.
Yeah.
That's ironic. My sister used to go out with him in high school.
Is that right? Really? Tell her that pass the word on to him. That I'm still thinking.
You still think about him, huh? I don't know. He's as big as you are, so I'm not sure. I
don't remember how big he was, but I know that they told me not to hit me.
Yeah. And so when you got hit, what what immediately happened? Were you knocked out completely?
It was, I played defensive tackle, and I came in. It was a short week that week too. It was a Saturday game. It was a game of the week. So the way it works in the NFL, Tuesdays are your days off, and that's when they bring guys in and work you out. So I had actually come in and worked out on Tuesday, and then Denver wanted me in for a workout. So I actually flew to Denver that afternoon, and I was working out for them the next morning. And then the Niners signed me, and I flew back. I was on the field practicing Wednesday, Thursday, Friday we fly to Dallas. So I knew very little of the playbook.
Right.
And then Saturday we're playing early in the first quarter. I go in and it was a trap.
Right.
And, so basically I go flying upfield. And,
Right.
the
Those
Dallas trap where they put their tight end in motion, they bring
Right.
it in.
Yeah. The trap play is to try to you open a hole up, a guard or
Well,
somebody
they
else
don't
pulls and-
block you.
Yeah,
let
they don't
one of
block
the
you, and
defensive
then
linemen
that's
get
what the
upfield.
trap is, and they give you what looks like a free shot, but
Right, right.
they take advantage of your momentum.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so, were you out cold on the field? Or?
I don't know. I know that they told me afterwards that I went through 25 to 30 smelling salts during the game.
Right.
I can remember bits and pieces of it. What I would remember really most vividly were on the sidelines when I'd crack a couple of them and then start to get my head clear, and then maybe remember a little bit of a play or two, and then a couple of good shots, and I'd still play, but wouldn't remember anything. And then you're watching game films the next day, and coaches are asking, "What are you doing here?"
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So.
It was not a good game for the Niners. 59-14.
No, it wasn't.
says here.
Yeah, I knew it was a blow. I couldn't remember
Right.
what the score was,
Right.
but
So, take us through a little bit of what the history is after that. So you're now you played the Dallas game. When were you? Did you? So obviously you were diagnosed with concussion.
No,
you weren't.
No.
Okay, so I should.
never missed a practice. No,
You didn't miss any practice.
No.
Okay.
I mean, the smelling salts really to just clear my sinuses. I think so I could smell a little better.
Right.
But,
And so during that week of practice, were you able to concentrate enough to learn any of the playbook?
to tell you the truth, I can't remember. Maybe that's why I don't remember. But
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I still have my old playbook, and I've got some notes in there and things. So,
Did you get back on the field the next game?
oh yeah.
And how long did you play that year? I think
Well-
that was the sixth game of the year, as I recall. But
Something like that.
Yeah.
So they brought me in. I played 2 or 3 games, and it was kind of a revolving door back then. We made, I think, 32 roster changes that season after the final cut day. So
Right.
every week there was 2 or 3 guys in and out. So I was there for, 2 or 3 games, and then they cut me, and then they brought me back a couple weeks later for the last several games of the season. So there was a little stint in there I wasn't playing.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I played in every game that I suited up for.
Right.
I didn't start, wasn't a starter, but
Right.
I played.
And so at the end of that season, take us through what happened. What happened during the summer? Were you able to do the summer camp with the Niners
In fact,
in '81?
so 81 season, or 81 off season, I actually blew my knee out in minicamp. Popped it out of joint in practice. They snapped it back in, told me it was a sprain. Okay, a sprain. So that was, I think, mini camps around April or May, isn't it? It was right after the day after the draft is when it is. And so my knee went out a few more times during the off season working out. I'd go and have it drained, 60, 70 cc's of blood, and be off of it for a week or so. And then, so I came back into camp, and then early in camp, I blew my knee out again.
Right.
Had knee surgery, and was coming back off of that when I started developing my symptoms from my hydrocephalus.
At that point.
And then that went into the...
And so, Kevin, brief history. You told me off camera that you had at least 4 or 5 diagnosed concussions.
Yeah, I'd
And
say
you had some knee problems too?
ankle problems.
Ankle problems.
Yeah, actually, in high school, college, I definitely had 4 or 5 diagnosed concussions, and I've probably had 10 or 15 other times where my bell was rung and seeing stars that weren't diagnosed. So, yeah.
And you told me a story that you were working with the Houston Rockets at the time, and you found yourself doing things that were not characteristic of your normal life.
Yeah, I would say that most people that know me know that I'm pretty laid back, down to earth, and very calm. And it was pretty much after I had my last time I played pro ball was '97, and I think I started the job with the Rockets in '99, and I started to know some behavior differences from before. You know, a little bit more aggressive, and which wasn't me, and I wasn't quite sure where it was coming from, but you know, I kind of understood, and that it was probably years of, you know, banging my head and
Right. Which we
concussions
know
and
now
whatnot.
of CTE, you know, chronic
Traumatic
encephalopathy.
Close
Say it
enough.
again. Yeah. CTE.
There you go.
Yeah.
And that is one of course, one of the array of symptoms. So we're going to, George, you know, we're going to, I think, use this time now to roll a few of the pictures we have of you, because the truth is that when I asked you how many years of football you played, you said 12 to 14 because you start with Pop Warner football.
Correct. Correct.
And so you're a 13-year-old kid. And
Actually, I'm 11 here. This
11
is
in
the,
there,
the very
yeah.
first Pee Wee Pop Warner team Stockton ever had.
Right. And you mentioned that some really good players played with you on this and the other team.
I counted them up. There was 29 kids in that team, and 3 of us signed NFL contracts in 1980. All of us played all through high school at Stagg, where we were undefeated. But Jack Cosgrove, my best buddy, he signed with the Seahawks in the 8th round. He was 8th round pick in 1980. And then Pat Bowe, our tight end, who went on to Stanford, he signed as a free agent with Green Bay. And Pat, I might add, now is the executive president of Cargill International with,
Oh, wow.
with I don't know how many tens of thousands of employees under him. So I guess his brain's still working. But
His brain's still working.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we had some players on that team.
Right. That's right. And then, and so take me to, so it was the next year that you had your
No,
concussion?
it was the 2 years after that. It was
2 years
my
after
third
that.
year of Pop Warner.
Right. Take us through that. What happened?
It was a tackling drill in practice, a bull in the ring drill, which was
Yeah, tell viewers at home what this drill is like, because I remember that drill well.
yeah. It doesn't. It has no place in football. It's more of a gladiator drill for the coaches.
Right.
They had us in a circle, the whole team, you know, maybe 20, 25 yards apart, and half the team was numbered 1 through 25, the other half 1 through 25, and there's a ball in the middle. So when they call out 6, both sixes run out. However you can get the ball across the line, your team gets the point, and the losers run extra sprints. So you had everybody, you know, watching you, making sure you scored.
Right.
And my number was called, and I, you know, ran out there. I was going against, I remember Larry Mondragon, he was our fullback. So I knew he was faster than me, so I wasn't going to go for the ball, I was going to go for him. And he told me afterwards that he was thinking the same thing. So we just ran 25 yards straight at each other. And of course, back then, you don't have good technique, you know, and it's top ahead to top ahead.
Right.
And I was knocked unconscious. They told me, you know, I got up, I told the coaches I was okay, and after I was down for a little bit, and they said I took a step or two and then, you know, went flat over on my face. They get me up, I say I'm okay, I take 2 steps, I go over backwards, and they say, you better take him to the hospital. So I was hospitalized on that one, but I was 13,
Right.
or however old you are, 9th grade.
Right. And when you played at Stagg in high school, were the coaches aware of that previous concussion?
No.
No.
Not that I know of. I mean, I coached at the high school level too, and that's something that you never.
You just don't ask.
No, it was never even thought of. Mm-hmm. And it's not, I'm not knocking anything. It just really wasn't
Right.
an issue.
Right.
Back then.
And back then, we didn't know a lot about it. So, do we have the picture? No, I want to get the picture of George at Colorado, which is sitting in front of us. So, George, you were able to, as you mentioned, get a scholarship to Colorado, and you appear in this picture. Is this from the Orange Bowl, or is this a?
No,
I
this
think
was
it was a league game, huh?
Yeah. Looks like we're playing Kansas, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a league game.
Tell us how the career at Colorado. You didn't have any serious concussions? Or
No,
did you?
I did.
No?
I was a 3-year starter at Colorado. I started as a true sophomore, and I I had, diagnosed concussions. I had a couple, 2 or 3. Never missed any games, never missed any practices for them. But, and in other games where you really don't remember things. The problem with a concussion, I tell this people all the time, is when you get one, you're the last one to know.
Right.
People have to tell you that you had a concussion because you think when you don't remember things, you don't know you don't remember it.
Right.
So people have to bring it to your attention that you were kind of out there.
And so now when you're in Colorado, you feel like, you were you all league at one point?
No, I was honorable mention All Big 8 my senior year.
Right. And so you knew you had a shot at the NFL.
Yeah, and I was in my sophomore year. I was injured. I missed I tore an ankle up. I missed 2 or 3 games, and I came back and played like a game and a half and blew it out again. So my sophomore year, I was kind of dinged. My junior year, I had a knee that I didn't miss any full games on, but I was playing on a torn up knee. And then so my senior was the first full year I played, and I had a decent year. And like I said, I was honorable mention All Big 8. I wasn't anything special though, but.
I didn't know if we got that picture of George in his Colorado. We did. All right. So, and Kevin, so you do you have other than possible CTE kinds of involvement? Do you feel other aches and pains from your surgeries or?
Yes, I do. In fact, my first real serious injury was actually during my tryout in Arizona. It was a week away from a big scrimmage we were going to have, and I was looking at it as my real opportunity to kind of show what I could do and make the team. I was having a really good camp, and so I don't know. A week before we were doing, I think we were doing a team drill, and it was supposed to be sort of non-contact or not full speed, and I actually caught a ball about 30 yards down the field, and I got exposed to the speed at that level, which was tremendous. And linebackers that are 260 pounds that can run 4.5s or 4.4s was new to me. Anyway, this guy was just sort of following the play and basically kind of jumped on the pile where he jumped on my shoulder. One shoulder was in the ground in the turf, and basically almost kind of like a pretzel kind of snapped me, and this shoulder was underneath my chin and had a cracked sternum and a punctured lung and dislocated shoulder. So definitely that it was a tough blow, and actually probably a semi-concussion as well.
No.
I didn't know that I was that injured. I knew I was trying to make the team, so I finished practice trying to show that I had some toughness, and it was the medical staff that actually pulled me to the side as they were reviewing the play on the sideline and said, "We want to take a look at you." And I think I was on pure adrenaline. Mm-hmm. And they took my shoulder pads off and saw that my chest was purple and whatnot, and I was immediately rushed to the hospital. So that kind of ended that opportunity. I did well enough where they had recommended me to go play over in Europe, and I had a pretty good season over there. No big injuries. I definitely, from the position of playing wide receiver and then also being a kick returner, you're definitely going to have, high-speed collisions.
Yeah.
And I definitely had my share of high-speed collisions that season, and was able to get through the end of the season. But, as far as being banged up, I still have shoulder problems. I had a surgery on my shoulder. Had some ankle injuries from turning my ankles. I had 2 surgeries on my right ankle, which I was recommended I should get another one to fully correct it. Mm-hmm. And so, every now and then getting out of bed in the morning time is tough.
Right. So talk to me a little bit about what we hear is the gladiator syndrome, a culture of violence. Talk a little bit about that. How does that get played out on a team?
I'm not a violent person, but that's why I played the game. It was I played 12 or 13 years, whatever it is, from Pee Wee Pop Warner on into the pros. And I tell people this, I carried the ball. One time in my first year in Pee Wee Pop Warner as a tight end, I caught one pass, and I had an interception in college. Carried the ball twice in 13 years. So I was a lineman. I had my hand in the dirt the whole time, you know. So I didn't play for, I didn't have any of the accolades. Yeah, I mean, it was
scores.
Yeah, I mean, I
in the
liked
trenches.
the physicality of the game. I loved it. And it was a love. I mean, I had two passions, and that was.
And so,
all.
how does it get played out? So, you get dinged up. The last thing in the world you're going to do
Yeah.
is report that.
In my 13 years of playing, I used to tell people I was never injured until my last year. I never had. Of course, I consider surgeries as injuries. If you didn't have surgery, they weren't considered injuries. So, and I've always used that term until just now. I just realized, but I never was injured really in all my years. I had, ankles and knees and things drained and broken, numerous broken fingers and and what have you. Like a handful of concussions over the years. Those weren't never thought of as serious.
Tell me about how coaches react to that. I mean, what is the stimulus that they would use? Are there encouragement? I mean, you hear about things like bounties and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
But it's clearly the case that you want to be able to pop a guy pretty good, right? I mean,
Yeah, and not only that, but you want to, and again, it's the mentality of the game. You want to, playing through pain was looked upon as something great. At one point in my career, and I believe it was probably my sophomore year in high school, I broke 2 vertebrae in my neck. I have 2 compression fractures in my C6 and C7, and I found out about those in the 80s after I was done playing. To this day, about once a month, my neck will go out and these 2 fingers will go numb on each hand. And I was seeing my neurologist after a brain surgery, and my neck happened to be out, so they ended up taking x-rays and found out. But, I mean, I can remember when I was injured during the game, if that was when I actually did it, but it was a big deal to be out of practice the next day, I mean, they had a neck brace on me that night, and I took it off, and the coaches, hey, way to go, way to suck it up. So that, especially as a lineman too, where you don't get any other, no one's saying good play. Right. So, those were your accolades. Having the coaches acknowledge that, hey, you're tough and you're sucking it up. Yeah. So that's the whole, and that's the mentality of the game.
Let me ask you a question that I haven't asked you yet. Do you remember plays in which you knocked somebody else out?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. What was that like? Tell me.
You loved it. I mean, and again, I'm not a violent person, but that was if it was a good, clean hit, and I wasn't a dirty player, but a good, clean hit where you laid somebody out, there wasn't anything better. I mean, really, especially as a defensive player. Right. Now, I played both ways in high school, but as a defensive player, that was you did it. You didn't get any better than that. Right. I mean, really. Yeah. And I hate to say it now. I mean, I really do. A good, clean hit where you laid somebody out, man, nothing felt better.
We used to get credit for if you could get a guy off the ground, jack him up, and no part of his body is touching the ground. That was
decleater.
Decleat, yeah. Tell us what that's like. You got hit more than you were.
Well, actually, I tried to play offense and wide receiver with a defensive mentality, a physical mentality. From my sort of size, there were some, people that were, playing, professional ball that, I sort of looked up to. One was like Michael Irvin was a big sort of physical receiver. It was kind of the start of a lot of big physical receivers. Terrell Owens and those guys came afterwards. And so, I thought it was kind of an advantage for me to sort of be, a bigger receiver. And in order to be, I thought, successful, I mean, you had to enjoy that part of the game. Right. I mean, I really felt like the game didn't really start until, I got hit or there was a big hit, and then it just got really fun.
And the game was on.
Yeah. So I mean, I as far as the gladiator part of it, I enjoyed that part just as much as the glory of catching a game winner or the first down or helping the team win. And in my experience actually in Arizona, I think I went through probably a 10-second, thing with myself as I was laying on the turf, and that gladiator moment came through. If I get up, I'll show these guys that I'm tough, and then, maybe that'll help me, make the team. So that definitely plays a huge part into it.
Right. And I think that we're going to talk about that a little bit, about the pressures that kids in high school feel, because there's a very real issue here that if this is my only way out to get to college and get an education, there's a lot of incentive, not only from the outside but from the inside, to stick with it and not give up on it.
Right.
I'm going to talk a little bit about now. I'm going to change gears a little bit. I'm going to read you a promo from a GQ article that came out in September 2009. And here's what it says. It says, there's a quote, and we know it's from Mike Webster.
Well. Yep.
How does a guy go from 4 Super Bowl rings to pissing in his own oven and squirting super glue on his rotting teeth? And that's the billion-dollar question. Retired NFL players are suffering from dementia, depression, and a slew of other seriously debilitating mental symptoms that are affecting the game's heroes at a freakishly high rate. The symptoms go way beyond the traditional punch-drunk diagnosis. It's killing them at early ages. There's something serious going on here, and it's only going to get worse. One forensic pathologist from Pittsburgh, who we know is Dr. Amalu, we'll talk a little bit about him, appears to have found the cause and wants to create a cure. Independent experts and colleagues have reviewed his work and believe in his conclusions. So why is the NFL making it a mission to discredit and marginalize his research? The answer is straight out of the tobacco company playbook, and it's disgusting.
Absolutely.
Is there a concerted cover-up in the NFL to keep injured players playing?
There has been, absolutely. If you go back, I don't mean to keep fastening this around, but
go ahead.
if you go back to when Dr. Ira Kasem was the head of the NFL, it was called back then the Mild Traumatic Brain Injury Group. He was the head of it for 23 years. And they had him on 60 Minutes and CNN grilling him repeatedly over the years about, you mean there's no correlation between repeated head trauma and long-term cognitive declines in the ex-players? And his nickname was Dr. No. Every question was no, just no. There's no correlation, no. Of course, he was paid by the NFL owners.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you think that he was just playing the game and understood sort of implicitly what they wanted, or do you think they really were at the point of saying to him, you really need to watch what you're saying here? And
I can't say I guarantee it, but having been in it even just for a short period of time, there was some very dirty dealings just with my own case, and I know 4 different players, 4 of my teammates from the '81 season alone sued the 49ers physicians and surgeons for medical malpractice and won. There was things that went on. I could imagine and I played against Mike Webster. Right. Yeah, he was my idol as I was growing up as a kid. I can remember I lined up over him when I was with the Jets. I started against him, and I thought this was like one of my moments. I'm looking at my idol, you know what I mean? And then to hear years later, I read about how he died.
Right.
In his truck, using a stun gun on his head to knock himself out because he couldn't sleep at night. That's a sign of CTE. I have the same symptoms at times. This last 3 nights, I bet you I've had a total of maybe 4.5 to 5 hours sleep.
Right.
But believe me, they've known about this for a long, long time. But once the cat's out of the bag, it's going to change the whole complexity of the game.
Right. Let me ask you a question. You told me a story about how you were in the locker room after you had a brain surgery with the 49ers, and the general manager, John McVay, happened to be in the locker room. He was showing some folks around, and they asked you why you were there.
Yeah, he was introducing them. We were lifting weights, and he's introducing him some of the players, and there were a couple of couples in there. And he's introducing them. Here's Dwight Clark, our tight end, and Joe Montana, and this is George Fisker. And he mentioned that I was on injury reserve, and he said I had 2 knee operations that year. And this woman asked me, 2? How'd you have 2? And I really thought that he had made a mistake, okay? And I said, no, ma'am, I had a knee surgery and I had a brain surgery. And he looks me right in the eye and tells me, no brain surgery, no, you had 2 knee operations with a look like, keep your mouth shut or you're out of here. Well, guys were getting cut, they got cut every week. And people don't realize this. You read about these big contracts they sign, a $10 million 5-year contract. They owe you 1/16 of that first year's contract each week. And if they cut you after the second week, that big contract is worth 2/16 of the first year's salary. That's it.
Right.
So you sign these contracts, they're nothing, it's just paper.
Right.
I mean, unless you're there, so they can get rid of you anytime they want. They hold that over your head. They hold it over your head that there's 10,000 guys looking for your job.
Right.
So you'll play when you're injured. And so prior to that, I knew that they were treating me weird. There was something going on. I didn't know.
Right.
And that was right before we went to the Super Bowl. And, of course, they didn't want anything rocking the boat.
Right.
I don't know how far. I mean, I could go on and on with this. I don't want to spend too much time on it.
Kevin, in your entire career, did anybody ever say to you, you know, we're playing this game and you have to understand, you know, the technique has to be right because you could be seriously injured. You could end up Darryl Stingley, wide receiver.
Yeah.
Does anybody ever say that to you?
No. I mean, the only thing I think I really heard coaches say, which probably when I got in college was, you know, to try to keep your head up. You know, I heard, you know, many different coaches say that. As far as technique, you know, for my position, you know, there wasn't.
Right, you weren't hitting guys.
You know, I wasn't hitting guys, so it wasn't about, you know. But what I did hear, in fact, when I got to, you know, that camp in Arizona was to get down.
Right.
And I had heard that, you know, sort of watching, you know, a few NFL games before, but during the camp there was a few close calls where guys were repeatedly telling me, you know, Kevin, get down. You know, don't try to, you know, drag 50 people like Mark Bavaro, you know, 30 yards. I mean, you got guys that, you know, are spearing and coming after you. So, you know, so get down was the other thing I heard.
And we knew, everybody knows that a quarterback who throws high over the middle is not very popular with his receiving core.
No, he is not.
But, you know, let's take the case of just this last year, James Harrison, linebacker, Pittsburgh, who had big issue with the NFL because they started implementing what was already on the books, you know, a head-to-head collision with a defenseless player. And he was saying, well, this is a big part of my game, right?
Right.
If a wide receiver knows he's going to get, you know, laid out coming over the middle, he's not going to come over the middle.
Right.
You're going to get, you know, alligator arms, as they call
That's
them.
right. That's
And
right.
so how much of a part of the game, how aware were you of, like, linebackers? Were there guys that you knew were going to hit you harder than someone else?
Yeah, you know, and I think the first sort of prominent player I played against was in high school, and he also made it to the NFL. His name is Jason Belzer. He was a defensive back. Ended up going to the University of Oklahoma. Was a first-round draft pick. Played, you know, many years in NFL, and he was the first person that I remember being aware of because we had some epic battles, and you know, he would do well. I'd catch maybe 6 or 7 balls in a game, but you know, Jason would show up with his hard hat and really put a hit on me. And then not really until I, you know, got to, you know, University of Idaho and I saw, you know, how big and strong and fast linebackers were. And but you know, I think, you know, it's like you said, it's part of the gladiator sort of mindset that you have to have, and if you don't have that, then you're not going to be successful. So I mean, you know, I kind of took it as just part of the game.
Now, so we've talked all along, because a lot of people say, well, okay, it's the NFL, and, you know, that's just part of the guts and glory. But the truth is that the NFL has an impact on everybody below it. Has an impact on college, has impact on high school. So in terms of a high school player, what is the impact of the NFL? I mean, how's that? Do you think that the gladiator mentality is as strong in the high school?
Absolutely. I mean, I go back to Mike Webster playing Pop Warner. Even if you go back to those pictures, you know, we had black and gold uniforms just like the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I can remember in practice, I'm John Kolb, I'm Mike Webster. We would emulate these guys. And I can only imagine what it's like now with the publicity and all the FaceTime these guys get on. They zoom in during the game, and you can see them John and talking. And I mean, the kids see that, and they think, hey, that's what I want to do. I mean, I did as a young player.
And so obviously, if when you multiply that out towards how many high school football players there are who are getting concussions and serious head injuries on a regular basis, it's a big issue for America that's just not being addressed.
It's huge.
And
People picture concussion as being knocked out. Okay, concussion, and you and I were talking about this. We've probably had thousands. When you hit hard enough to see stars, that's your brain concussing against the skull. So I think I mentioned to you earlier, I do a lot of motivational goal setting talks and things, and I was down at Stagg High School, my old alma mater, a couple years ago, and talking to some of the guys, and NPR happened to be doing a show on it, and they were interviewing them. Are any of you ever worried about head injuries? And one of their players, I remember he chimed in, he says, no, and they asked something to the effect that, well, how do you know you really, laid a lick on a guy? And he goes, oh, you can really tell when you hit him so hard you see stars. And I just cringed. I was thinking, these guys don't even know.
Right.
And that's looked upon as, hey, that great job. Did you see stars on that one? Yeah, I did. All right, good job.
So that's, and I think...
Now I want to step back too, but that was back in my days. Now I pray to God it's different. I think they're much more cognizant and they're aware. We didn't know those were concussions.
Right.
I mean, I really didn't until just recently. I always used to tell people, well, I had one in Pop Warner, I had, maybe a couple in high school, and I could count them off, but now...
So tell us about this new thing, the subacute concussion. And I know Dr. Amalu talks about that, does he not?
Yeah, Amalu, what they're finding out now, Amalu has Dr. Julian Bales on his board.
Right.
Dr. Bales was the Pittsburgh Steelers physician for 10 years or over, and he was there back when Webster was there. But now they're finding out it's not even the concussions, it's the multitude of subconcussive hits.
Right.
You don't even need to see stars, it's just the repeated pounding. Right. Dementia pugilista is dementia, and punch drunk is where that came from the boxers. Okay, well, they didn't need to get knocked out every fight. You beat a guy's head enough times, he may never even been knocked out, but yet he develops dementia pugilista.
Right, and you got
10 years
Muhammad Ali.
Exactly.
Sugar Ray Robinson. I mean, you had some of the greats of boxing.
Well, that's a good point. Muhammad Ali, Lou Gehrig's disease, ALS. NFL players have an 800 times higher rate of developing ALS than the general public.
Right.
That's not a coincidence.
And Alzheimer's.
Alzheimer's. I mean,
at a higher level, early onset.
I'll be perfectly honest here, and my wife cringes when I state these things, but I'm 52 years old. And as of a month or so ago, a couple months ago, they had me on 4 different dementia medicines at once. And I'm trying to run my environmental consulting business when I'm taking Aricept, Namenda, Lamictal, and Risperidol. I'm 52 for crying out loud. And, I'm qualified for no benefits from the NFL.
Right. We're going to talk about that. So you had 9 brain surgeries.
Yes.
And during all that time, when you were having those brain surgeries, how did the 49ers treat you?
Now you're opening up a whole can of worms.
Yeah. Well, we tell it like it is.
I will. I'll try to keep this thing as short as I can. We go to the Super Bowl in January of 81. No, January of 82. It was the 81 season. So we win the Super Bowl 16. I had my first brain surgery early in the season, having some weird symptoms after it. So we win the Super Bowl that spring, that May, so 4 months after the Super Bowl. Now I'm having some real problems. And I go back and see the team doctors. They send me down to Stanford where I had my first brain surgery. They do a brain scan on me. They tell me I'm fine. And I thought I was still playing. When I'm in the hospital after my first brain surgery, the trainers had called me saying, hey, Visk, we're looking at having a special made helmet to protect your shunt because I developed hydrocephalus. They drilled a hole in my skull. There's a tube in there. There's a pressure valve in the back of my head, and there's a tube goes down to my abdomen. It's permanent now. So they were going to make a helmet for me, they said, and to protect my shunt. So I was all for playing. And you understand the mentality.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, they say I'm good, you know. So 4 months after the Super Bowl, my shunt goes out. I go into a coma. I'm in Mexico, of all places, fishing with my brother Mel. He brings me home. We get a new doctor here in town, or actually in town. I was thinking I'm in Sacramento. Dr. Cobb operates on me, and 10 hours later, I'm comatose again. They rush me back in, give me a third brain surgery, give me last rites. I'm in intensive care for I don't know how long. I really don't remember that first year. Really doing some bizarre things. One of my first memories, though, a year or so after, is I started getting hospital bills.
Right.
And I'd write on them, and there were several $100,000. And keep in mind, I made, and I'm not complaining, but I made, I think, $79,000 my last year playing. That was with 2 playoff games and the Super Bowl money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like, guys had jobs in the off season.
And so naturally, when you came to give the 49ers the bill, they paid it, did they?
Oh, sure. So I would write on it, please bill San Francisco 49ers. And I wrote it so many times, I still remember their address.
Yeah.
It was 711 Nevada Street, Redwood City, California.
And
I'd send it to them. I'd get it back from them a week or so later, and they would have circled the total, and they would just write on it, you owe this amount. Now, this is just 4 months after I'd spent a couple seasons with them.
right.
Not even a card, sorry to hear you're back in the hospital. I had creditors on me for 5 years, almost 5 years.
Right.
And I had to take them, I had to sue them for workman's comp.
Right.
And
And
they
at
took-
that point, they gave in and said yes.
No, they took me so far as to put me on stand, and their attorney comes out and he has my last day's practice schedule from 1981. And the full day is scripted out. You know, you get there at 7:15 in the morning, whatever it was, 8:15 in meetings. So he's going through the whole day, and he's going through the practice schedule. As a defensive lineman, the nuts and bolts of practice, every play is just about is head contact. So once we got into that part of it, it was a slam dunk. The judge just says, why are we here? But in the meantime, I had the 2 brain surgeries, had creditors on me, and the knee surgery they did on me, which they kept telling me for weeks or months there was nothing wrong with it. Finally, Coach Walsh told Dr. Bailing to at least scope it. So what does he do? He takes me in, doesn't even scope it. I thought he had scoped it. Years later, I found out he didn't. He goes in, opens up both sides, takes all my cartilage out. I had actually torn my ACL ligament, never repaired that. So during the course of these 5 years where I have creditors on me, I also have 2 more additional knee surgeries. The last one being I had to go up to Tahoe to have an experimental Gore-Tex ACL transplant done. I have 2 stainless steel moly bolts and an artificial ligament they drilled holes through and run that in. So I'm battling all this while I'm trying to get these bills paid.
Right.
It was a nightmare.
Right. And I know from your perspective, you did everything you could. You all through the brain surgeries, you were going to college to get your degree.
Well, this was prior. Once I settled my claim, once I won my claim in '86, because I was injured on the job, as any other employer is obliged by law,
Right.
state of California, if you're injured on the job and you can no longer function in that position, they are obliged by law to retrain you in a field of work where you make a comparable amount of money. Now, I was making back then what they called top wages.
Right.
And when I finished when I won my suit and they owed my back hospital bills and in any future, and I thank God I won that. That was brain surgery 2 and 3. I'm on brain surgery 9 now.
Right.
And you can't get insurance for this stuff, and you don't pay for it. So when I won my case in '86, they offered me like $35,000 to go away. I said, no, thank you. I want to keep my medical open, and I want to go back to school and finish my biology degree.
And you did.
Not knowing, though, that it would take me 5 more years because I had 4 more brain surgeries while I was at Sac State.
Right.
Finishing all, I had, 4 semesters of chemistry and 2 semesters of physics.
Right.
And,
The point being, though, that you did persist, and you are, you have your own business,
Right.
and despite the fact that the brain surgeries and CTE that you suffered does diminish, your
Absolutely.
abilities at time to time. I want to make the viewers aware that you're actually out there battling as a professional out there, not trying to take the system or anything like that.
Right. I mean, I've been diagnosed, when I went down to Amen's clinic, Dr. Amen's clinic, a year and a half or so ago, the first time, I've been under 3 times down. I'm scheduled to go back down again July 6th, I believe. They just called me like yesterday. But when my first evaluation, he did a 3-day evaluation on me, 12 hours a day. And his evaluation was, I would have George rated at 100% disabled due to, and there's a list of 16 different things, damage to the right frontal lobe, da-da-da-da-da, it went on and on and on.
Right.
Have I ever drawn anything? No.
Okay.
But, I don't know
You might.
how much longer I can keep functioning, really.
Right. Now, before we go, we do have a young man in the audience who's going to model your rings. Do you want to come up and,
It's my hero.
yeah.
Yeah.
You want to introduce this young man?
It was Josh, right? Jonathan. I was close. I got the J right. That's good.
Okay. Jonathan, you want to hold
Yeah.
your hand down? Maybe
Come
George
on in
can
here,
help
bud.
him.
Why don't you turn around there? There you go.
Yeah.
Now he's
So these are two rings.
he's
One
wearing
is
wearing the bling.
Yeah.
One is a Super Bowl ring,
There it
That's
is.
it.
and one of them is in a
Orange Bowl.
Orange Bowl ring. And Jonathan, I hope to have back on our show at some point, when we have another show, because he has his own story to tell.
Yes, he does.
And we want to thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming
This right here
to the
is
studio
the hero right here.
today.
This
and
guy is,
believe me,
sure
you're
hero.
you're our hero. So
this guy's
thank you so
something
much for
special.
coming aboard.
Yep.
So thank you.
Thank you.
So now, I do want to get around to talking about some of the changes that we can make. I mean, what do we need to change at the high school level?
You want to take that, or
Yeah, join in.
because you?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you did coach some.
Yeah.
here.
I did.
Yeah.
I coached at Humboldt State for a year in '06, and then actually I coached at Nevada Union for a couple of years as
Right.
well.
And you see high school kids, and we're not picking on anybody here,
Yeah.
but
No.
there's high school kids who get dinged up, and
Right.
pretty much they either don't tell the coaches, or
Right.
sometimes they get sent back onto the field before they're really recovered.
Yes. I think, what they need to do is teach better techniques, which I think the NU staff, they actually do camps during the summertime, and they work on a lot of tackling techniques, which I think are helpful. But, I think, what the trainers need to do, which I think they have a very good trainer. His name is Jamie Wise, who I think is someone who wouldn't allow a coach to override him on his expert opinion. And he's, sort of a new wave type of trainer where, when I was in high school, the trainer, especially if you were a star player, you were dependent upon a lot, would do anything to get you back out there, lie to you and whatnot. Where, actually I've seen Jamie, take helmets and basically tell players, no, you're not going back out.
So we need a medical intervention here, basically.
We do.
Need some kind of reevaluation to seriously look at what's going on here and check a kid out before they get back on the field, don't we?
Absolutely. I think they need to be evaluated, and I think that's what parents need to do. Like George and I said, we love the game, and we want the game to continue to grow. This is more about raising awareness about concussions and precautions that need to be taken, and maybe rules need to be changed, and it's for the coaches and all the people involved in the game to take a look at what they're doing, how they're doing it, and make sure that they're doing it for the betterment of the kids and the players.
And we're told
I
that
like to use a term that really, we're trying to save football because it is going down the same path as big tobacco was. They denied. So we need to. You touched on several different issues, but there's a lot. There's not a silver bullet. It's you need educating coaches, with having the trainers and giving trainers full power.
Right.
There's a lot of pressure on folks at every level. There is
Yeah.
a trainer. What do you mean you're pulling him out of the
Right.
game? You know what? So they need to be insulated from any repercussions or whatever. People need to know the long-term effects of this. I think that's a real eye-opener for them.
Right.
We used to think you got your bell rung and you shook it off and you're okay. Well, now we're just, and I will say this, we're just finding out a lot of the stuff. Maybe they knew about it earlier and they kept it squelched like Dr. Omalo's studies.
But I got to tell you, I ran across a study that was actually sanctioned by the NFL in 1994, and they found that in the head injuries where people had serious concussions, that the collision rate was a 20-mile-per-hour collision. And they knew that the reverberation of the brain inside the cranium was at 8.5 miles per hour. That's an incredible finding, and that was in 1994. So I'm not so sure the NFL...
Oh, they've known. They have put accelerometers in helmets. Okay, now keep in mind, a jet fighter pilot, when they're accelerating, they'll pass out between 5 and 6 Gs, okay, when they're accelerating. They've put accelerometers in helmets in players, and a typical defensive lineman in NFL will register 15 to 20 hits of 20 to 25 Gs per game. And DBs and linebackers have registered up to 100 Gs. Now, the reason why they don't pass out is because it's, boom, it's a quick hit. The fighter pilot's a long, extended acceleration. Right. But what they're finding out now is that quick hit. You know, your brain is moving at that speed, and it's sloshing around suddenly, in there, and it's stretching those neurons, and they get inflamed, and then they start dying in your 30s, 40s, and 50s, as opposed to your 60s, 70s, and 80s for normal human beings.
Right.
You know?
Now, one of the pictures we have, if we can find it, George was kind enough and brave enough to show us a brain scan of your brain. We've got about 5 minutes left. I'm not sure we can find it, but if we do, let the control room just, override me and flash it up on the screen, because it's graphic evidence of what your brain looks like when it's damaged the way it is. So let's talk a little bit about, in the time we have left, what other things could we be doing? George, you made a list out, right, and sent it off to the NFL, to Dr. Ellenbogen?
Yeah, I've been coordinating with him and Rich Ellenbogen. When he came on board, I was very leery.
Skeptical?
That's an understatement. Rich, I truly believe Dr. Ellenbogen is the real deal. He's in this for the right reason. He asked me, a year ago, last February. And the fact I can bring these dates out is huge for me. That it's telling my treatments have been very helpful. But he asked me for a set of rule changes that I thought could better protect players' heads. And he told me within a week he would convene a meeting with the NFL Rules Committee. And I sent him off 2.5 pages. Everything from training and education and giving every player a microcog test before the season, a microcognitive test, so you have data. Baseline data. And if a guy's concussed, he doesn't. I'm reading some of these recommendations, it's like 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Well, everyone's different. You may have a guy that's 100% functioning within a week, and someone else that may take 4.5 weeks.
Right, and it could be that one guy has had a history of 20 concussions and the other guy has 5.
But maybe the 20 were never even diagnosed either.
Right.
So so I had everything in there from preseason diagnostics to training to, I had accelerometers in helmets, and if a player exceeded a certain threshold, not every helmet, but put them in rotate them around. If a player exceeds a certain G-force, whatever that may be, he's out of the game. Or if he exceeds a number at a lower level in a certain period, maybe that's enough to pull him out for a week or two. I mean, I don't know. These were just some ideas that...
we also discussed the other day, we might look at some of the... we have up on a picture now of George's brain, and believe me, we're going to be talking more about this in a future show, because we're going to try to talk about some of the treatment regimens that might be helpful.
And that was after 80 hyperbaric treatments. And another treatment that I've had great results with, I've been using Dr. Barry Sears omega-3 fish oils.
Right.
Very simple treatments.
Right. And a hyperbaric chamber, which we're going to focus on in a couple of weeks. So overall, I think, our objective is to be able to bring awareness to people.
Absolutely.
Try to make sure that, football players are well versed on what could happen to them, teach good technique, maybe look for some rule changes that de-emphasize this cultural violence and get back to the beauty of the game. And particularly looking at, having impact on youth football and high school football.
Absolutely.
And so,
very few kids are going to go on and play. We were fortunate enough to go on and play and very few kids will go on and play in college even. But I mean, it's a game. I tell people, it's still, even at the professional level, it's a game, for crying out loud. It's to entertain people. So is it really worth?
Yeah, and when I look back, I don't want, my highlight to be just that I, got to get a full ride scholarship, and I, got to play professional ball. Really your highlights when you look back should be the fact that you had children that were healthy and they succeeded and whatnot. And I think some of the things and where the game has gone today with all the different media that we have, which is so different 25 years ago. I love ESPN. I watch it every day, but there's so many different sports channels,
right,
and so much pressure for coaches to win.
Yeah.
For them not to lose perspective,
right,
on what's really important. And
right,
I've seen that at youth football, the high school, yeah, football level, where I think right, not to get caught up with just trying to win and right, win at all costs.
We've got about 30 seconds left, so we're going to wrap it up. Unfortunately, it's the
Yep.
fastest hour on TV. I want to thank Kevin Brown and George Visker. We're going to have you guys back, of course, on some future shows. I want to thank the crew. I have Sam and Janice in here, and I got Jenna and Marilyn and Diane, and of course my producers, Gail Woodman, and the pug, her pug, Harley, who's one of the only pug producers in the world. So this is Paul Minicucci wrapping it up, saying goodbye until next time.
Wait a minute.
Sorry, lady, but you can't park your bike on this here sidewalk.
But I'm working here. I'm a delivery bird, for pizza's sake.
Later that night, Pinky got together with all of her fellow delivery birds, and they formed a special interest group.
We've got to overturn this law.